We're studying the chart a little bit in between our Bible readings. Of course, we're reading the Bible as we do it. It was part of our Bible readings, but several people out there had asked that I go over the chart because I'm standing in front of this thing for 50 years preaching. And they wanted me to review it just a little bit. And I've got it up here so you can understand where we are in history. We're studying church history, we're studying Bible readings, and we're studying the Gospel of Mark from Greek, all at the same time. We'll run shift back and forth with these. If we had 7 days a week to do it, we'd do it, I guess. And anyway, we're in the 10th chapter of the book of Wile Shemot, or Exodus. Wile Shemot is the Hebrew name for this book, and it means "and these names." We and Ele, these, and Shemot, names, and these names. And it's talking about Jacob's sons' names and what they had to do in history. We looked at the last part of the book of Genesis, and we saw Jacob's prophecy, and it did come true. And we looked, as we come through here, God called out Moses to take his people out of Egypt, and he had left Egypt with a warrant over his head, dead or alive, basically, it doesn't matter. Yeah, they were going to kill him because he killed one of the Egyptians, and basically turned around and betrayed Pharaoh that had raised him for 40 years. And they were very angry about that, but he chose to follow God rather than to follow Egypt. He could have been one of the rulers in Egypt, and he was. He was adopted as Pharaoh's grandson because his daughter adopted him as his son, as her son. The name that she gave to him was the name that stuck, Moshe. Can you say Moshe? Moshe. Moshe means to rescue. Rescue. Now we use the word Moses because that's the English part of it, but it's Moshe because it's got a shin instead of a sin. There's two Hebrew, well, there's several Hebrew S's, but that one there's an SH sound, Moshe. Moses went into the land of Midian, and there he met some of Abraham's descendants there, and Jethro, or Jeter, he had several names. Moses had about 6 or 7 names too. Everybody called him something different. I have a grandson that I call Richard. His name is Scott Richard, but I call him Richard because that was his father's middle name, Gary Richard, and I named him after one of my lifelong friends, Richard Neal. So these names mean something, and everybody called him by a different name, but the name that Pharaoh's daughter gave to him stuck. And then when we went in and approached Pharaoh, and the first thing he did was he did a great miracle in the palace floor. And he threw down, basically, you might call it Adam's rod or Aaron's rod or whatever. It's still in the Ark of the Covenant today. But he threw this rod down on the floor, and what did it become? A dragon, not a serpent, a dragon. A life-breathing supernatural dragon, a Leviathan. And when Jannes and Jambres, Pharaoh's magicians, threw their rods down, they became, miraculously, Satan gave those rods power to become Leviathans also. Don't ever discount that Satan can't work miracles. He does work miracles. And his miracles do one thing. They confuse people. They confuse people. They confuse people. Well, we know that by the power of God, God is more powerful than Satan. We look at the world today and we see the existence of evil, especially, we weren't used to this in America. We got plenty of it today in high places. Corruption, 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 corruption. And thumbing their noses at us and just smiling, say, so what are you going to do about it? Well, evil does that, doesn't it? Satan just is a master of evil practices and deception. Darkness is going to be over the land of Egypt, and that's telling us two things. The spiritual darkness, we go back to the the second chapter of Ephesians. You can go to the sixth chapter of Ephesians, and we're not wrestling against flesh and blood, but we're wrestling against spiritual darkness. Spiritual darkness. And the Lord is going to show Pharaoh and his people that you are in spiritual darkness, and I'm going to give you a little taste of real darkness. John, in the first chapter, in writing his gospel according to John, said that the religious world sought after darkness rather than light. And that's so much today in the world today, with all the religions that we see in the world today. People don't know which way to go because Satan is such a great advertiser of false religion. He is. That's what confuses people. If he can confuse people on how to be saved, now in Catholicism, there might be some people in Catholicism saved, but if you believe everything the Catholic Church does, you won't be saved. You might get saved in different denominations, and some probably. But if you go into Islam, you're not going to be saved. You're going to fight against God. You're going to be an antichrist, because Islam is antichrist. It's antichrist. They named the name of Isa. It's what they call Jesus, but they are against him. The profession of faith in Islam is there is no God but Allah, and he has no companion. He has no son. That's what it says. And Muhammad is his messenger. Muhammad was never a messenger of God. Never. Nor is he. He's a messenger of Satan. Now these are strong languages and hard things, but this is true. Either you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. We got a place right here for you.
Thank you.
Right over there. Either you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, or you're lost forever. Not for a while, but forever. Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He is God the Son. In John 1:1 it says, "En arche ein ho logos, kai ho logos ein proston theon." Kai ho logos ein theos. That's Greek, all right, but it says this. In beginning kept on being Jehovah. The word there, logos, means Jehovah. It means the word, the Hadabar of the Old Testament. In beginning kept on being the Word, and the Word kept on being an inseparable part of the Godhead. So Jesus Christ is part of the Godhead. Jehovah is part of the Godhead. Jehovah always existed. Jesus always existed in eternity past. And then the last sentence in that first verse of John says, because the Word kept on being God, or the God kept on being the Word. Simple as that. Now we're studying over this chart that I stand in front of here. And we're going to look at something here. The death angel did not pass over Egypt. We're going to find that out. It was Jehovah that passed over Egypt. And without the protection of his blood, all died that were not under the protection. All the firstborn died. Jesus Christ is the firstborn of the Father, isn't he? And the lastborn, basically, unless you would call ourselves born of God, because we are. John the 3rd chapter. Now the darkness that was over the faces of the land. Let's look at that. Then the Lord said to Moses, and this is Exodus, We'ele Shemot, the 10th chapter. And the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand toward the sky, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. Have you ever been someplace so dark that you could feel the darkness? I remember Brett. Now you're going to be listening to this. Brett there lives in Bakersfield. He's one of our greatest supporters. He's written about 10 books, I think, all off of my lectures. Brett came up here to visit me, and he stayed in Mary Jane's little place down on Wright Road, and he went out there and walked out there in the middle of the night, and he said it was so black, it was so dark, it scared him. We see this sometimes. Have you been to the Carlsbad Caverns? And they turned, I think they might have stopped turning the lights off down there because several people had heart attacks when they did that. The darkness. You can't see your hand in front of your face. When I was down there, I had a luminous watch. So I could see something a little bit. But darkness scares you. But people live in darkness and they're happy in darkness, spiritual darkness. And sometimes they don't know it. And what Moses is going to be used to teach these people is that you're in spiritual darkness. Your gods are no good. Now, in the beginning, there was a contest between the gods. You know, Heti was the frog god, and the fly god, Beelzebub, all of these, the Nile River, all of their gods, God overcame. Finally, that Moses' or not Moses, but Pharaoh's magician said, we lost. This is the real God of heaven. This is the finger of God doing these miracles. This is the finger of the God. We have no power over that at all. Now let's see what's going to happen here. Moses stretched out his hand toward the sky, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt for 3 days. 3 days. That ought to be enough to scare the daylights out of them, huh? Fun, the wording there. They did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days. But all the sons of Israel had light in their dwellings. The light bulbs, so to speak, wouldn't work. Their candles wouldn't work. The lamps wouldn't work. Nothing would work. But the sons of Israel had light because they were following the true God of light. Simple as that. Then Pharaoh called to the Moses. Moshe means what now? Means to rescue. To rescue or draw out. Moshe. He called to Moshe and said, go serve the Lord. Only let your flocks and your herds be detained. Even your little ones may go with you. And Moses said, you must also let us have sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice them to the Lord our God. Now he's using the Lord our God. The word there means the master of the universe, Jehovah. It means Adonai. It also means Baal. They served Baal, didn't they? Baal means master. And sometimes the Lord is referred to as Baal. He's the real master. There's false masters, but he is the real one. Therefore our livestock too will go with us. Not a hoof will be left behind, for we shall take them to serve the Lord our God until we arrive there. We ourselves do not know what we shall serve the Lord with, what he's going to require of us as a sacrifice. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. Now, remember, Pharaoh hardened his own heart in the beginning, but now God is going to put him in his heart in the kiln and harden it. The same sun that hardens the clay softens the wax, you know. We all have felt the conviction of the Spirit of God in our lives. I know we have. I have, every day.
Yes.
But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he is not willing to let them go. Then Pharaoh said to him, get away from me. Beware. Do not see my face again, for in the day you see my face, you shall die. And Moses said, you are right. I shall never see your face again. You are right. Yeah, I shall never see your face again. Now the last plague. The final touch. You know, when I used to build guitars, I worked on a lot of guitars. I worked on Merle Haggard's guitars. I worked on Buck Owens's, and just a gob of those movie stars. And the guitars had to be perfect. We'd take them, we'd paint them, and we'd sand them, we'd paint them, we'd sand them, paint them again. And I remember one time I did Buck Owens' guitars when he was on Hee Haw, the red, white, and blue Telecaster, and then his acoustic guitar. Also, they had to be painted red, white, and blue. And so we painted them red, white, blue, and we polished them, and we'd take them and sand them, and then we'd buff them out until you could just see yourself in them. And we sent them off to Nashville. And they came back about 2 weeks later. They had taken those beautiful guitars and run a forklift through them. and they were all busted up. Worse than before. They were just worn from use before. Buck took good care of his stuff. Real good care. Merle Haggard thrashed his, but Buck Owens took good care of his instruments. And we had to do it all over again. They took that. Now people can take the Word of God, which is a beautiful masterpiece. In the original language, it is without error at all. Every tense, mode, and voice is perfect and plenarily inspired. And they take it and mess it up sometimes. Look what the Jehovah's Witnesses did to it. Look at the Quran. The Quran is a misuse of the Bible. It quotes the Bible all over the place, but it destroys the meaning of the Bible. Destroys it. The last plague now, we're going to come up to. Now the Lord said to Moshe, one more plague I will bring upon Pharaoh and Egypt. You know that his spiritual advisors told him, quit fighting against the God of the Hebrews. We're losing. Don't you realize that you're destroying all of Egypt by being obstinate? These are his spiritual leaders and you know, his counselors. But he had hardened his heart. Now God's going to harden his heart. After that, he will let you go. I'll let you go from here, and when he lets you go, he will surely drive you out of here completely. Now, back when God told Abraham, and when God told Abraham, he said, your children are going to go down into Egypt. They're going to be down there for 400 years, and they're going to come out very rich. Now, not only is Israel going to leave Egypt, but the people are going to pay them to leave. They're going to pay them to leave. Now, renting out houses sometimes is a problem, isn't it? When you rent out houses, they tear the places up. Every time I've rented out, except for once, when I rented out a house down on the farm down there in Old River, every time they left, I had to do $10,000, $20,000 worth of repairs. But I had one of my friends, one of my students, he had a guy get in one of his homes, and he was tearing the house down, and he wouldn't leave. And he made the landowner give him $1,500 to leave. He had to pay him to leave. And when he left, he had $20,000 or $30,000, $40,000 worth of damage. There's going to be so much damage in the land of Egypt that the Egyptians are going to pay the Jews to leave. They're going to pay the sons of Israel to get out of here. Leave, get out. After all of that, he's going to let you go. He's going to drive you out. Speak now to the hearing of the people, and each man ask from his neighbor. Now, these are the Jewish neighbors. The Jewish with the Egyptian neighbors. Okay? They knew these people. What do you give me if I leave? Basically, that's it. What do you give me if I leave? Now, this is kind of hilarious today, but it works. You know, God has done some kind of, even some of the parables are hyperboles and funny. You strain out the gnat and swallow a camel. That was one of the parables that Jesus gave. You strain out the gnat. Now all the Jews, they would take cloth and strain out their wine out of the wine bottle just in case there was a gnat in there, because that's an unclean animal. He said you strain out the gnat so you won't eat this unclean animal, but you swallow with one gulp a camel. Now that's a little bit, physically it's impossible, isn't it? You got to skin the camel. You got to butcher him, you got to separate the bone, but you're going to swallow the camel with one gulp. Just swallow it down. What he was saying here is you take the Mishnah and your Talmud, you take the wrong things from your fathers, which you call your rabbis, and you weigh them heavier than the Word of God. And in doing that, you sin greatly. You are a greater sinner swallowing the camel. Hood, or hide, hair, and hoof, and all. They swallow the camel spiritually. Not possibly physically, but spiritually they did. Now, ask your neighbors articles of silver and articles of gold. Now, God's going to use them to build his tabernacle. I don't have the tabernacle up here right now, but I do down there. All of the articles of the tabernacle, and there it is. All the articles of gold and silver and brass and all this are going to get in this situation here. It'll stay there. This is the foreknowledge of God, and this is what he's going to do, because he's going to ask them to give him these articles, gold and silver and bronze and whatever, and fine clothes. They gave them their clothes, their finest clothes. They gave them to him. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Furthermore, the man Moses himself was greatly esteemed in the land of Egypt. There's going to be a lot of Egyptians leave the land. They're going to convert. Now remember, back when Jacob went up to Shechem and pitched his tent against Shechem, that Shechem himself, the ruler's son, which would become ruler, and they named the city Shechem after him, that he fell in love with Dinah, Jacob's daughter, and he asked of her, he captured her. Evidently he did not deflower her or abuse her sexually, but he wanted to marry her. And he asked her father for her hand, and he called her a virgin still. And then the brothers, Levi and Simeon, told him, well, if you convert to our religion and be circumcised, you can marry our sister, but not otherwise. So they did. And after 3 days that they'd been circumcised, when they were very sore, they went in there and killed every one of them. And then we start the Canaanite wars. And 100,000 people, according to the book of Jasher, died in those wars. Now here, and when Joseph was down in Egypt, when he became the ruler of Egypt, what happened during the Canaanite wars with Joseph's sons, they were renowned warriors. God gave them the power to fight. One man could kill 1,000 men, and they did. And when they came into the land of Egypt, God built up Egypt and made it the most powerful nation in the world, Egypt. But now God's going to tear it down, because they believed in him then through Joseph. And every one of those boys, before they died, the Egyptians would not fight them, because those boys were so spiritually powerful that no army could outcome them. They fought with Joseph. Joseph was a general. All of Egypt's wars, Joseph and his brothers fought and won. And the legend of these goes down, and now Moses, the descendant of Levi, that one boy, the bad boy, remember, Levi and Simeon went in and killed every boy, every man, and robbed and wiped out Shechem. Now, one of these, God uses fragile vessels. He uses cracked pots to do his job many times. Look again at, you look at Lion, the tribe of Judah, Jesus. But Judah was a rascal. He married a Canaanite woman, had 3 sons. God killed 2 of them. And he picked a wife for them, Tamar, and she finally seduced him by acting like a prostitute. He was a really good guy, you know, and had twins. And there we go through the Messiah line, through that one. That's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. God uses sinful men sometimes to bring about his will. And God is going to use this sinner, Pharaoh, to bring about his glory in this land. God built up Egypt, and he's going to tear it down. And Moses said, thus saith the Lord, about midnight I am going to go out into the midst. Who says this? Who's going? Is he going to send the death angel? No. He's going to go out himself. There's no death angel here. It's Jehovah himself. And Jehovah means he who shall become. And all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne, even to the firstborn of the slave girl who is behind the millstones. all the firstborn of the cattle as well. Moreover, there shall be a great cry in all the land of Egypt, such as there has never been before, such shall never be again. And against any of the sons of Israel, a dog shall not even bark, whether against man or beast, that you may understand how the Lord, how Jehovah, how Baal, the master of the universe, does things. And there's going to be a distinction between Egypt and Israel. And all of these, your servants will come to me and bow themselves before me, saying, go out, you and all the people who follow you. And after that I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in a hot anger. Then the Lord said to Moses, again, the Lord, the Master, Adonai, Baal, Jehovah, said to Moses, Pharaoh will not listen to you, so that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt. That man, first of all, rejected God, and now God's rejecting him. And Moses and Aaron performed all the wonders before the Pharaoh, yet the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the sons of Israel go out of the land. Isn't that what's happening today? Look it up in Washington, D.C. today. You don't think people are rejecting God today, and they think they're on a long leash, but one day they're going to answer to God. One day they'll answer to God. I hope they answer before to the people for what's going on. But they'll answer to God, and God is always there. He's a God of love, but He's a God of judgment too.
Yes.
Everybody would like to look at God as if He was a merciful God that wouldn't send anybody to hell or bring judgment upon anybody. But He's a God that bought back the universe from Satan. Adam in the garden over here handed the title deed to the world to Satan. And Jesus Christ began to take it back at the cross, Calvary. And yet we live in the church age today, and we see the rampant evil that is in the world in our time. But the Lord will take His people away, and judgment is going to come down on the earth. And yet there's still going to be mercy during that period of time, because there's going to be a lot of people saved then. I don't want to go in that time, do you? I don't want to be there. I like to be finished. I like to die or be raptured in the church age.
Yes.
Not in the tribulation period.
Amen.
And it's up to you what you do. Our Father, we send this message out to the world that you might use it for your honor and glory. Please touch people's hearts. Some of them are undecided about following you, that they'll make the decision. They don't want to go into this wrath. And as you showed your wrath upon Egypt, that was the type of the world, and you shall show those plague wraths again during that tribulation period. Father, please use your word wherever it goes for your honor and glory. Please forgive me where I failed you. In Jesus' name I pray.